The night of the moon ceremony was supposed to be the happiest night of Elena Voss's life. Every wolf in the Nightfall pack gathered under the full moon, waiting to see which young wolves would find their fated mates. Elena stood at the edge of the crowd, as she always did. She was 18, quiet, and the daughter of a low-ranking pack member. Nobody expected much from her. She did not expect much from herself either. Then the wind changed. A pull, deep and sudden, tugged at her chest. She turned, and across the clearing, Alpha King Damian Blackthorn turned too. His eyes, usually cold and controlled, went wide with shock. The whole pack fell silent. Everyone felt it. The bond had chosen its mate, and it had chosen the king. Elena's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had heard stories about mate bonds her whole life, how they were rare and sacred, how they connected two souls forever. She never imagined it would happen to her, and certainly never with the Alpha King himself. Damian walked toward her slowly, the crowd parting for him. For one breathless moment, Elena believed something wonderful was about to happen. Then she saw his jaw tighten. She saw the flicker of panic cross his face before he hid it behind a hard, kingly mask. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, and said the words that would break her life in half. "I reject you as my mate." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena felt the bond inside her chest tear, a pain sharper than anything she had ever known. It was not just heartbreak. It was as if something essential had been ripped out of her body. "You are not fit to stand beside a king," Damian said, though his voice wavered slightly on the last word. Elena would remember that waver for years, wondering if it meant something, wondering if some part of him regretted what he was doing even as he did it. She did not cry in front of him. She refused to give him that. She simply turned and walked away, her spine straight, while the pack whispered around her. That night, Elena packed a small bag and left the only home she had ever known. She used an old charm passed down from her grandmother, one that could mask a wolf's scent so that no one from the pack would ever be able to track her. By sunrise, she was gone. Damian told himself he had made the right choice. His father had died only a year earlier, leaving him the crown far too young. The pack was fragile, threatened by hostile territories on two borders. His council had spent months arranging his engagement to Sabrina, daughter of the leader of the Ashford pack, whose warriors and resources were the only things standing between nightfall and war. A political marriage would secure peace. A mate bond with an unknown, powerless girl would secure nothing but chaos. That was what he told himself, again and again, in the weeks that followed. But his wolf did not agree. His wolf grew restless, pacing inside him at night, refusing to settle. He stopped sleeping well. Food lost its taste. Sabrina noticed his distraction and grew colder toward him, though he barely registered it at the time. He told himself it would pass. Rejections were supposed to fade with time. His did not. Meanwhile, Elena settled in a city 300 miles from Nightfall territory, a place full of humans where no wolf would think to look for a runaway pack member. She found a small apartment above a bakery and took work as a nurse's assistant at the local clinic, using the medical knowledge her mother had taught her. She told no one what she was. She told no one where she came from. A month after she arrived, she began to feel unusually tired. Her sense of smell, always sharp for a wolf, became almost unbearable. She assumed it was stress from the rejection, from the exhaustion of building a new life alone. It was the clinic doctor, a kind older woman named Dr. Reyes, who finally suggested a possibility Elena had not considered. Elena was pregnant. She sat frozen in the exam room, staring at the small screen showing not one heartbeat, but two. Twins. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her stomach. Fear came first, sharp and cold. What would happen if the pack discovered that the rejected girl carried the king's children? Would they be seen as threats to the throne? Would Sabrina, soon to be queen, see them as obstacles to remove? Elena had grown up hearing stories about pack politics, about how ruthless some packs could be when it came to protecting a bloodline's power. She made a decision that night, sitting alone in her small apartment with her hands still resting on her stomach. She would raise her children away from all of it. Away from the pack, away from politics, away from a king who had called her unfit in front of everyone she knew. The twins were born on a quiet spring morning, a boy and a girl. both with dark hair and startling silver eyes that seemed to catch and hold light. Elena named them Kale and Freya, after no one in particular, simply because the names felt strong and gentle at once. From the moment she held them, exhaustion and fear gave way to a fierce, unshakable love. Whatever came next, she would protect them with everything she had. Back in Nightfall territory, Damien's engagement to Sabrina continued moving toward its planned wedding date, but something had shifted in her behavior that even his distracted mind eventually noticed. She grew short-tempered with pack servants. She made cutting remarks about wolves she considered beneath her station. Small reports reached Damien of Sabrina dismissing complaints from lower-ranking families, of her speaking with unusual familiarity to visitors from a rival territory that had once threatened Nightfall's borders. It was his beta, Marcus, who finally brought him proof. Sabrina had been secretly meeting with representatives from the Ashwood territory, sharing details about Nightfall's patrol routes and defensive weaknesses, in exchange for a promise that Ashwood would support her family's claim to expanded lands once she became queen. Damien's fury was cold and absolute. He ended the engagement immediately and had Sabrina escorted from Packlands. The alliance he had sacrificed everything to protect had been a lie from the very people meant to secure it. Alone again, and without the political pressure that had driven his decision that night at the moon ceremony, Damien finally allowed himself to face the truth he had been avoiding. He had rejected his true mate for nothing. Worse, he had done it cruelly, publicly, in a way designed to protect his pride as much as his crown. He began searching for Elena immediately, but 3 years of a masked trail left him with nothing. He sent trackers to every territory he could think of. He visited human cities on the border, asking quiet, careful questions. Nothing worked. His wolf grew more restless with every failed search, howling in frustration inside him during the quiet hours of the night. The breakthrough came almost by accident. Nightfall's healer, an elderly wolf named Old Tomas, attended a regional medical conference meant to share knowledge between pack healers and sympathetic human doctors who quietly treated wolves in emergencies. During a break between sessions, he caught a scent that stopped him cold, faint but unmistakable, layered beneath a masking charm he recognized from old pack traditions. It clung to the coat of a young nurse's assistant who had briefly attended part of the conference to observe. Tomas did not approach her. He simply memorized every detail he could and returned to Nightfall immediately, practically running to find the king. Damien left within the hour. He arrived in the unfamiliar city at dusk, following the address Tomas had gathered, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in battle. He knocked on the door of a small apartment above a bakery, half convinced he had chased another dead end, as he had so many times before. Elena opened the door. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 3 years had changed her. She stood taller somehow, steadier, no longer the uncertain 18-year-old girl from the moon ceremony. Her eyes, though, still held the same wariness he had put there the night he rejected her. Then he heard it, small footsteps behind her, and 2 children's voices asking who was at the door. Damien looked past Elena and saw them, a boy and a girl, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, dark-haired, with silver eyes so like his own that his breath caught in his throat. He did not need anyone to tell him. His wolf recognized them instantly, some ancient instinct roaring to life inside him with a fierce, protective joy he had never felt before. "They're mine," he said quietly. It was not a question. Elena's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Their names are Kale and Freya," she said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "And they don't need a king who didn't want their mother." The words hit him harder than any blow he had taken in his life. He deserved them. He knew he deserved them. But he also knew, standing there and looking at the family he had never known existed, that he could not simply walk away again. "Please," he said, "give me a chance to explain. Not for my sake, for theirs." Elena studied him for a long moment. She saw something in his face she had not expected. Not arrogance, not entitlement, but genuine regret, worn deep into the lines around his eyes. Finally, reluctantly, she stepped back and let him inside. Over the following weeks, Damien did something no one in Nightfall would have believed possible. He set aside his crown, quietly arranging for Marcus to manage pack affairs, and stayed in the human city. He did not try to command Elena or demand instant forgiveness. He simply showed up, day after day, learning who his children were. He learned that Kale loved to be read to before bed, and that Freya refused to sleep without a small stuffed wolf toy Elena had made her. He learned how Elena had built her entire life from nothing, how strong and resourceful she had become without any help from him. Slowly, carefully, he told her the truth about that night. About the council's pressure, about the war he feared, about the fear that had made him choose duty over his own heart in the worst possible way. He did not ask her to forgive him. He only asked her to see that the man standing before her now was not the frightened boy who had rejected her. Elena did not trust easily anymore, and she told him so plainly. But she watched him with their children, patient and gentle, despite being a king who had never changed a diaper or read a bedtime story in his life, and something inside her old wound began, slowly, to soften. The peace did not last. Sabrina, furious over her exile and desperate to reclaim some form of power, had not given up her ambitions. She tracked rumors of the king's absence back to the human city, guessing correctly that only one thing could keep Damien away from his throne for so long. When she discovered the twins, she saw not innocent children, but leverage, a way to force Damien into either restoring her position or losing everything he now cared about. She struck on a quiet evening, arriving with 2 hired wolves from the territory that had once betrayed Nightfall's secrets. Elena had just finished putting the twins to bed when she heard the sound of the back door being forced open. Damien, staying in the apartment that night to help Elena manage a stubborn cough Freya had developed, was on his feet instantly, every instinct roaring to life. He placed himself between the intruders and the children's room without hesitation. The confrontation was fast and fierce. Elena, though untrained in years, fought with the same determination that had helped her survive alone for 3 years, blocking one attacker's path to the bedroom, while Damien handled the other 2 with the brutal efficiency of a trained alpha. Sabrina, cornered and desperate, lunged for Elena directly, but Damien intercepted her, his wolf's fury making him faster and stronger than she anticipated. When it was over, Sabrina and her hired wolves were subdued, awaiting transport back to Nightfall for judgment before the Pack Council. Elena stood breathing hard in the hallway, and Damien turned to her immediately, checking for injuries with frantic, careful hands. In the middle of the chaos settling into silence, something shifted between them. The old mate bond, dormant since the night of the rejection, flared back to life, warm and undeniable, filling the space that had been empty for 3 long years. Elena felt it too, and for the first time since that terrible night, she did not pull away from it. "I am not asking you to become queen because duty demands it," Damien said quietly, once the children were finally checked on and found safely asleep through it all. "I am asking because I love you, and because I want our family whole, if you will still have me." Elena looked at him for a long time, weighing 3 years of pain against the man standing in front of her now, humbled and honest, in a way the boy at the moon ceremony never had been. "Our children will always come first," she said finally, "before politics, before pride, always." "Always," Damien agreed. Months later, Nightfall Pack gathered once again for a moon ceremony, though this one carried a very different purpose. Elena stood beside Damien, dressed not as an outcast but as their queen, while Kale and Freya stood between them, their silver eyes bright and steady in the moonlight. Damien addressed his pack, formally acknowledging Elena as his one true mate, and their twins as the rightful heirs to the Nightfall throne. The pack that had once watched her walk away in shame now bowed their heads in respect. Elena felt the old wound, the one that had never fully healed despite 3 years of distance, finally begin to close. Not because the rejection had never happened, but because it no longer defined her. As the ceremony ended and the pack howled together beneath the full moon, Damien took Elena's hand, and together they watched their children laugh beneath the silver light. A family finally whole, built not on politics or duty, but on a love that had survived rejection, distance, and time itself.